Hello and welcome to Naomi's Bookshelf. We're going to do my mid-month wrap-up today. So far in the month, I have read 8 books, but I did talk about 2 of them in my January wrap-up as they were fit in nicely. Those would be Richard III and Henry VI, Part 3. I talked about my complete Hollow Crown review over there. I also made a dedicated Hollow Crown series review, the TV show review, if you want to check that out. But I talked about them over there. So if you want to check out my thoughts on the Shakespeare plays, you can head over there. Otherwise, I did 6 more books so far this month, read them. And I really have enjoyed most of them, like 4 or 5 stars, almost all of them. So we're gonna start off with the ones I don't own first. So the first one is White Rage by Carol Anderson. I started this one January, I think, or maybe December even. But this one is one that I had to put down for other book reasons, and I want to finish it off. I had only gotten about 20 pages into it, and I knew this one would be hard-hitting, very important, but also really tough at points to read. And that's exactly what this was. This one was about just the way that white supremacy has been throughout American history, and it was very factual. I found that it was very, very critical, very critically thought. And when I say critical, I don't mean very antagonistic in a you kind of way, but it was very plain spoken, and therefore it was also very opening up of these problems that have existed throughout history, even up to the point of current day. So it was very eye-opening, and I felt like it was very, very important to read. I had no idea some of these things that went on, and honestly, as a Canadian, I have never lived in these places as a real as a resident. I have visited, but I've never lived in these places, so I don't think I would have experienced these situations as a visitor. However, as a Canadian, I also was reading this and wondering what's this hidden racism going on in my country, and how does that impact people in my world, in my country, and in my province, and in my town. So I really thought that it was eye-opening in so many ways, because this wasn't just about Black people, it was also about anyone of color, and how white people have really risen up against it. So it was just very factual, very date-oriented. It had a lot of footnotes. If you want to check it out, I think you should read it. It was heavy reading. It followed a lot of history, and very well researched. I gave it 5 stars because you can't give a book like that less than 5 stars, in my opinion. It was also really uncomfortable to read, and that was on purpose, I think, because you should not feel comfortable reading about the things that those people went through throughout history, those names, those individuals, not people group, or those towns have gone through, just in general, even up until the most recent elections, which was very interesting. Well, most recent up until the publishing of the book. So very, very sad and very interesting and very enlightening. So 5 stars for that one. Then I also read Solo, which was by Kwame Alexander and Mary Rand Hess. This one I really loved as well, for different reasons entirely. This one is one that's out of my comfort zone for a lot of reasons. This one is a spoken word YA novel about music, and all of those things are words I do not tend to enjoy much of. So I was pleasantly surprised when I was reading this, and I could not stop listening to this audiobook. It's a 4-hour audiobook, and I flew through it. It is about Blade, who he's like turning 18, he's graduating high school, and his family is really not what he wants. His dad is an aging rock star who is in and out of rehab, and whenever he's not in rehab, he's doing drugs. And so his whole life is about this whole situation, and he's so tired of it. I thought it was so beautifully done, and I really enjoyed it. I honestly could not stop listening to this audiobook. I loved how there was music interwoven in it. It was all about identity and belonging, but it was also about how what makes your family your family. I really loved it. So that one I give 4 stars to. And I read both of these for the Blacklit Challenge. So I think with those 2 books, I knocked off the entire challenge for the month. I'm not done reading Blacklit, but this one I read a nonfiction about the States. And I also read a spoken word, which does talk about Africa as well. But I am in the middle of another one, so I will be hitting that 4-point goal of the Blacklit Challenge this month. So my Agatha Christie book for the month of January, which I finished just after January, like the 1st, was The Hollow. And this one I really enjoyed. This one is about a country estate where these people are all invited to spend the weekend, and Hercule Poirot is invited more to entertain the guests because they're going to put on a murder and have him figure out who did it. However, when he gets there, someone is actually dead, and he has to figure this out. It's interesting because not all of the people who are involved in the mystery were invited to this evening. Also, the person who is murdered has interesting connections with several people, as always, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was very clever, and the way it showed the different characters, it did mislead me, but that's because I was just obsessed with one phrase in the book. I was obsessed with one phrase that was ever said, and I was like, it's this person, I know it. And I was like, I don't care what other evidence I hear, it's this one person, because I heard this one thing, which probably wasn't the best way to read the book, although I was surprised then later when I found out the true result. So that was great. And I really thought that the murder was actually plausible and interesting. I really did enjoy this one. It covers a lot of different things about relationships and people and how these different characters interacted. The whole premise of this is that these people are all assuming that someone did it. I don't want to tell you who died, because I thought that was really something that kept me on the guessing game for a while when I was reading it. And then once they died, I was really intrigued about how this was all going to play out, so I don't want to spoil you on that. But once the person died and then everyone was trying to figure out who did it and they all assumed something, then they all had to work their assumptions into what could actually be possible. So I don't know what else to say. The back kind of gives some of it away, but I think the best way to go into an Agatha Christie is knowing very little. I recommend this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. My last book that I actually read was Little Miss Matchmaker by Dana Corbett. I could not fall asleep at night and I needed something light and easy and no brain power, so I picked up this one and I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. This one is about a firefighter and a teacher, and I literally read it 2 nights ago and I can't remember their names. Miss Fraser and Uncle Alex. That's what the back says. I think the teacher's name was Dinah, I think. So I think I'm gonna say Dinah. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But Dinah and Alex, they are like, she's a school teacher and he is a new guardian to his second cousin's niece and nephew kind of relationship. While their parents are either unable to be there or are sick. One of the parents has cancer and is undergoing treatment in another city, and one of their parents is away with the military. So he is a guardian to his niece and nephew, and it's kind of a relationship that he's like, I don't know how to be a parent, and there's this young, cute teacher that he is now interacting with. So it was cute, it was fine. I think the thing about this book is that this book takes a lot of other characters, and I have read a couple other books from this particular series. This series is about a lot of different families who deal with adoption, mostly about an adoption center that had an adoption scandal where the founder of the center forged adoption papers for several people. And so some people didn't realize who their families were from or who their birth parents were. And that's kind of the setup of this entire series. And then there's many couples that come through the series. And this is like book 13 or something. And so I kind of felt like there's too much emphasis on other couples. I did like a cameo from one couple I've read before. But when it came to other couples, I was like, I don't know you. And I felt like this book was really short and I didn't need that much time spent with other people. I felt like one cameo was good and not constantly talking about these other things. So in this one also, it does talk about that adoption center and the scandal as well, and this mystery of who's trying to come after them and potentially kill them because they keep looking into this. And that's kind of an underlying story too. So it was like about Alex and Dinah, but it was also about all this other stuff. So it kind of took away from the romance aspect. So 3 stars. Enjoyed it, but at the same time, I'm not going to highly recommend this series to anyone, but it's a quick, easy read. So the next book that I read, or next book I have on this pile, is Young Pioneers by Rose Wilder Lane. This one is another short one, and this one is about Molly and David, who are pioneers, and their lives are very reflective of the Ingalls. And when I say that, I mean that their lives are extremely copycat of the Ingalls. So I read this for the Little House readathon, and I discovered after reading this book that Rose took her mother's manuscripts and wrote this before her mother ever was publishing books. And Rose published Young Pioneers and never told her mother, and her mother found out about it, who's Laura Ingalls Wilder. Laura found out about it in the newspaper, which is awful. So I read this, I gave it 4 stars, and I think I'm settled on that because it is beautifully written and the characters are interesting. I liked how it was different in a lot of ways than Little House on the Prairie, but so many events were copy and pasted. There was the grasshopper event, there was the winters, there was and it's a short one, so you gotta be like, there's something going on here. But I have a trouble with this idea of, do I support the author and not the book? Like, can I support the book but not the author? Can I separate the two in my head? Because Rose Wilder Lane is really not a kind person. From everything I've ever read or heard about her, unbiasedly. So I'm kind of now biased against her. But yeah, this one, it just follows 6 months in their marriage, or maybe, no, it's more than 6 months. It follows them right after they get married, and then they move, and Molly's 16, David's 18, I think, maybe 20, and then it just follows their little hardships. It was good, and I enjoyed it, but at the same time, there's that discussion. I feel icky about it, but I did enjoy the book. So I'm feeling like I'm in this in-between phase. I don't know how else to say it. So 4 stars for the book, 0 stars for the author, if that makes sense. Yeah, everything I've ever heard about her, in a very factual way, has not been good. So there we are. So the last book that we'll talk about is Educated by Tara Westover. This one I read for my book club, and I really love this one. I gave this one 5 stars. This one is an amazing story of resilience. This is a memoir about Tara as she grew up in an extremist Mormon home where they took these Mormon ideas but turned them very much into a cult-like mentality, even though it was just her family. And then it became something more. And I really liked how in this book, literally the first page, Tara Westover says, there are Mormons who are kind and Mormons who are not. There are people in this book who are Mormons and people who are not. And there's no correlation between the two. So basically saying not everyone who is a Mormon is kind, or not everyone who's a Mormon is awful. And it's not about her faith, it's about her growing up. And I really appreciated that. I personally am not Mormon, so I cannot speak to that quality in this book, but I did love how this book was not about that. It was about her experience growing up with this family. Her father in particular was struggling with mental health issues, and he never acknowledged it, or he never got help for it. So there were many troubles with that. She thinks he might be bipolar. That would be explaining a lot of issues for her, because she did study a lot of those things later on. But the way it starts off is with her being a young child who does not have a birth certificate. They never went to school. Her and her closest siblings never went to school. And then when she finally got a birth certificate and she was able to, you know, grow up and start doing things, she wanted to go to college. And when she did go to college, there was a lot of fight from her family, and she went and she discovered that the world she lived in was a very different world than the one she thought. And so she had to educate herself, and her family fought her and belittled her and treated her like garbage the whole way along. There's also strong warnings for abuse in this. There is an abusive family member in here who treats Tara like literal garbage, or trying to kill her, or being possessive over her. He's a piece of work. Let me just say that. And it's so sad to read about that relationship, because it's a thing that happened, and her family just didn't say a word. They just didn't talk. And anytime someone would speak up about it, they'd take his side, or they'd say, we don't talk about these things, and therefore taking his side. So it just was a really bad situation to read about, but it was really interesting and amazing to read how Tara grew and how she became confident in her abilities, how she went from having zero education, literally zero. She was homeschooled, but they never were homeschooled, they never taught. And she went from being taught nothing to teaching herself at university and how she learned there. And then she went to Cambridge, and it's just a wonderful story of educating herself. But I also loved how it taught her, like how she showed how she educated herself on her value, because I feel like that was the common thread through this thing. Was the whole beginning, she felt like she was worthless, that she was just worth what her family taught her, or she was valued at what her family said, her parents said, her dad said. And whenever her dad said, yeah, jump on this and do that, and it's gonna probably kill you, but no, we'll be fine. And she did it because she didn't think anything was wrong. But towards the end, or towards the middle even, she started to realize, no, my life is more valuable than this mistake. And so she started to challenge these ideas and mentalities. And that's what I thought was beautifully brilliant about this book. There are so many great things, and I loved it. So 5 stars for this one. So Educated fit a couple prompts for the Valentines. Young Pioneers, I think, fit a couple prompts as well. I can't remember. Honestly, my memory has not been great with these kind of things this month so far. Migraines have not been fun. However, I've been enjoying my reading. So there's that. We'll also check in on the clue board. So far we have the haul, which is Christian fiction. I am switching them around because honestly, I don't know how much I'm gonna get more done from my TBR clue. So this one is Christian fiction. Then I have 400 to 500 pages, which was solo. Romance, don't have that one yet. Historical fiction, Young Pioneers for the ballroom. Conservatory, which is book club, I'm putting in Educated. Also for the library, I did finish White Rage, which was for readathon. So let's look at those cards. So we have here in the dining room, we have the revolver and the dining room. That was lucky. Next up, we have the library, which had in it the hall and the candlestick. Next up is the hallway, which had the knife and Mrs. Peacock. We also have the conservatory, which has the lounge and Mrs. White. And then finally for the ballroom, we have the ballroom. I shuffled these, I promise. And the library. So, not too shabby. I have, how many rooms left? 4 rooms left to read, and then we will have a complete board. Otherwise, I'll have to guess my way into it. Not many people have shown up, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for watching this video. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you are new here, and leave a comment down below about any of these books. Also, if you have a favorite book that you like to read around Valentine's, whether it be a romance or something different, I'd love to hear what's your go-to February book. I'll talk to you in the comments down below. Bye for now.